Okay. Hi, if you're just settling in, just doing some sound and video checks. Do you want to just check the sound from your side? Okay, testing 1, 2, 3, just making sure we're running here. All good. I'm going to just go onto my YouTube channel and just play and just make sure that it's recording. Myron. Okay. Seems we're having a little bit of trouble with our chat function here. Let's see if we can sort that out. Give me 2 minutes. Let's see if I can sort that out. Hi Nadine. Okay, so somebody is managing to chat here. Some people seem to be having trouble with that. If you can't leave a message here, if you're having any difficulty, you can always email any questions or comments through to Carla. I'm going to put her address in the box here. It's Carla at transformationalparenting.guru. Right, I'll pop that in there. Hi Bev. Right, everybody coming in. I assume children are tucked into bed. Okay, we're going to give it one more minute. Just let everybody else join us and then we will get going. So welcome. Okay, so you have to click on top chat. Thanks, Nadine. If everybody can do that, and then you can introduce yourselves, say hi, let us know who you are, why you're here. Carla is going to be keeping an eye on the chat for me, just so that I'm not trying to talk to you and read things at the same time. So if you have questions or anything, you can pop them in there. And Carla is actually WhatsApping those through to me, so I will just keep checking on that every now and again. Right, it is 8 o'clock, so we are going to get cracking. So welcome to this webinar on respectful parenting. And I suppose I should introduce myself first, just for those of you who don't know me. My name is Mia Von Shah. I have been doing transformational parenting for the last almost 8 years now, working with parents specifically on respectful parenting, something that I tend to call present moment parenting, and just helping you to understand your children's behavior, what it means, how to help them through those difficult times. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So welcome. Thanks for being here with us. Just for those of you who have got your kids at home, if they are getting up and coming in and you're feeling a bit disrupted or anything, that's okay. We'll be recording this, and I will send through that link, or Carla more likely will send through that link to you sometime tomorrow or the next day, so you will be able to watch anything that you've missed, listen in, so don't stress if something comes up and you have to go and attend to one of your kids. All right, so I guess we should start with, what is respectful parenting? What does that even mean? And the way that I think of it is, just because our children are smaller than us, and I would say sometimes, if they're babies, just because they can't speak, doesn't mean they don't deserve the same sort of treatment that we would give to another adult. And, I like to use a story to illustrate this, of one of my best friends who actually died of cancer last year. And I spent most of last year visiting her. She ended up bedridden. And I spent quite a bit of time with her, and I watched her go from a very independent, very capable adult to someone who was eventually bedridden, in nappies, unable in the end even to speak, unable to walk, unable to feed herself. And that situation reminded me very much of how we are with our children, because there were certain things that happened in that state that made me think of the way that we deal with children in our everyday life. For instance, I was having a very deep conversation with her one day, and her hospice nurse, lovely lady, but she came in there, ripped off her sheet and just started changing her nappy. And she was horrified. Obviously, you try to keep at least a bit of dignity when you're in that situation. So I stepped out of the room and afterwards said to this nurse, look, in future you can just tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, we need to do some cleaning. Could you please step outside? And just allow her to have some dignity. So it was things like that. Another time she wanted to wash her hair, put her head into this hot water, and she yelped and said it was too hot. And the nurse turned around and said, no, it isn't. And she was like, why don't you feel it? So I put my hand in, and it was too hot. But even if it wasn't, I actually would have said that it was, because it's not my head that has to go in there. And these situations just reminded me a lot of how we deal with children and how we often don't take them seriously. We'll interrupt their play, which is very serious business to them, and just start changing their nappy without asking their permission, without just excusing ourselves for interrupting their very important work and their concentration. And we think it doesn't matter, but to them, it matters a lot. So I think of respectful parenting as, how would we deal with another adult who we loved and respected? How would we treat them? And I really want to make a point here about boundaries, because a lot of people think that respectful parenting is just letting children run rampant and do whatever they like. But if you do put it into those adult terms, if you live with your partner, or even if you lived with a friend, you wouldn't let them walk all over you and treat you badly, or treat other people in the space badly. We even treat the environment badly. We have boundaries, and we have respectful boundaries with other adults. If they're doing something that we don't like or that's disturbing us, we ask them nicely to please not do that. And that's the kind of attitude that I'd like to bring in when we're dealing with children, is to see them as full beings, as full, complete beings. We often think of children as on the way to being adults, but they're not on the way to anything. They already are full and whole and perfect exactly as they are, and they need to be treated in the same way. There's been quite a lot of research on ageism when we deal with old people. How we speak down to old people, how we use kind of baby language. And I think it's time for that research to be turned towards children as well. I think a lot of what we do with children could be considered ageism. Even the way that we use our language, we start saying choo-choo train and bunnies, and we don't speak to them the way that we would speak to any other human being. And if they can learn the word choo-choo, they can just as well learn the word train. So I think let's start communicating with our children respectfully, and understanding that even though they can't necessarily speak back to us, they understand a lot more than what they can say. So whenever I'm asked about respectful parenting, the biggest topic that comes up is meal times. All right, how do we have a respectful mealtime? How do we do this without losing our minds and without having our children end up with scurvy or something like that? So when it comes to meal times, I think the most important thing that I can say is modeling. We need to model, what does it look like to have a decent meal? What does it look like to have a meal with other people? And what does it look like to eat in a healthy way, to respect your own body? And there, instead of getting so caught up in what the child is doing, let's rather focus on what we're doing. And if you know me, and my slogan is be the change you want to see in your kids. So you do it first. If you want them to eat veggies, you eat your veggies and love them, enjoy them. I see Lorraine saying here, mealtime is a struggle in our household at times. It's a struggle in every household at times, but it doesn't actually need to be a struggle. We can just manage it calmly. And I think where the struggle often comes in for all of us is that we worry about our children's health. We're thinking, if I don't force them to eat these vegetables, they're never going to eat vegetables. They're going to become picky eaters. They're going to die. They're going to get diseases. And I can totally relate to that, because I went through that with my own kids. And what I found put my mind at rest was just giving them a multivitamin. And I was like, okay, at least I know that they're getting everything they need. And then I can relax. When you can relax, they will relax. So what we would do, and here's an example of that, is we all sit down for meal times together. We put out the food. We don't make special baby food. Unless they really are babies and they need their food soft still. But once they're eating proper solid foods, you're going to serve your kids what everyone else eats. So then we're eating steak and vegetables and they're eating macaroni cheese. We give them the same food. We keep presenting the food, whether they eat it or not. So we sit down to eat. The child gets up, runs off. You say, I see you finished eating. Clear the plate, put it away. We don't need to get stressed about it because children will not starve themselves. In fact, they're actually very, very in tune with what their bodies need. And you'll find that children, one day, they'll eat the peas. The next day, there's no way. They are not touching them. And they're actually much more in tune with the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind knows exactly what we need and when we need it. And we actually lose touch with that because of our conditioning and because of the way that we dealt with at meal times by our own parents, where people are saying, you will eat this, it's good for you, or don't eat that, it's bad for you. We actually know what's good and bad for our own bodies, and that changes from day to day. So if we actually trust children, and you'll hear a lot about that word, if we really trust them and we keep providing the same food, then or we keep providing different food is actually the point. It's make it exciting, make it interesting, make it something that you're going to enjoy, and then enjoy it in front of them. I see someone saying here, Bev, what if they don't want to come to the table? Well, what we're doing with children is not forcing, we're inviting. So invite them to come and join you. Family meal times can be such an amazing time to connect. And if we show them that we love it, that we love coming to the table and enjoying our meal, again, what are we doing? We're just modeling for them. They will come eventually. The food stays at the table. So a lot of what I see with parents is they will take the food then and run around after the child. Okay. So then you're running around trying to feed this child all over the place while they're playing. And, there's not much eating going down, or if there is, it's very distracted kind of eating. So they must come to the table. If they're hungry, they'll come and eat. And I've seen it, in our play group, for those of you who have been to Francis's play group, amazing. The children know it's snack time. They come and sit down because they don't get their snack unless they're sitting there at the table. And these are children ranging in age from 1 to 3. And they will happily come and sit there. They know how it works. So when we have that sort of routine and everybody else in the family comes and sits down to eat, because a lot of the time that's not what happens. We feed the children separately. We do our own thing later. They need to see what it looks like to have a meal together. And there, I think it's quite nice to have those extended family meals if you can, or even to have friends round so that they see that. A lot of the time in your nursery school settings, that works really well because the children have other children and they learn what to do in those social situations. So we're helping them just to see what's normal. They may not sit down for a full meal when they're still little. And, I've seen it with my own kids, which is quite funny because they can get up and they actually have, honestly, when they're at home, quite dreadful table manners. But I've had people comment, that they've stayed over at about how impeccable their table manners are, how they sit so nicely and finish all their food and say please and thank you and please pass me this. They know what to do because they've watched us do it. So even if they are, in our house, maybe a little bit more free to do what they like and run a little bit wilder, they know how to behave in a social situation. And that's really what we're trying to do, is give them the skills to go out and interact in the world in a way that's going to make sense and that's going to help them, I would say, to be liked, but maybe that's not the right thing. But I suppose we do want our children to be liked in the world. We want them to be invited back to places. And we need to model those skills for them at home and when we're out and about. All right, so I'm going to move on to empathy. Okay. Empathy, the thing that I get asked about empathy a lot is, how do we do that without being fake? Because we know a lot in respectful parenting, what we're supposed to do is reflect back children's emotions to them, and we don't want to sound phony. So here we need to understand the difference between empathy, sympathy, and personal distress. So empathy is where it's like, I know what that feels like because I've been there or I've had something similar. I can feel your pain. I know where you're at. Sympathy is, oh, I feel sorry for you. Shame. Like there you are having the emotion. And personal distress is where we get so involved with that that we actually become upset ourselves. So what we're looking for is that empathy. And to find empathy for a child, the best thing that I've found to do is actually to scale up the problem. So let's say your child is unhappy about the new baby that's on its way or that's just arrived. Then scale up the problem to an adult level so that you can relate to how they're dealing with that. So for that one, you can imagine that your partner comes home with a new wife. And he's like, oh, by the way, I've decided to take on a second wife. So I hope you don't mind, but you're going to love her. She's so much fun. You're going to love her. Oh, by the way, I'm giving her some of your old clothes, because you're not looking so good in those anymore. You maybe got a bit bigger for them. So I'm going to hand them over to her. And yes, she's probably going to sleep in your old bed. And I am going to be giving her lots of attention. If we really put ourselves in that situation, and how we would feel in that situation, then when our child tries to hit the new baby over the head, we can actually understand that. We can have empathy for an emotion and an action that we may not necessarily like, and definitely we need to intervene. But at least we can understand the emotion. So even as we stop the child from hitting, we can tell her, I know how you feel. It's hard to have a new baby in the house. You're feeling put out. You're missing your time with me. We can really get in touch with that. So I highly recommend scaling up the problem. Find a similar thing in your own life and then connect to your child on that level. Then trust. Maria Montessori said something. She said, never do something for a child that a child can do for themselves. And I really think that is actually the core of trust. So what we want to look at is actually seeing our children as capable, letting them do things, letting them try things. And what I find the trouble is that we jump in because we see them struggling. And we don't like children to struggle. In fact, we don't like anybody to struggle, really. But struggle is part of growth. Struggle is part of learning. And, there's a lovely story about this caterpillar. It's in its cocoon and now it's turned into a butterfly and it's trying to get out of that cocoon and it's really struggling. And somebody comes along and breaks open the cocoon, and then the butterfly steps out, but then it dies. And they can't understand why that is. And someone says to them, well, the thing is, it needs the struggle because now its wings are not strong enough to fly. And that's really a good lesson for us with our kids, is that they've got to go through some struggle. And it's through the struggle that they gain that confidence in themselves. And we want to protect them and everything. And of course, there's a place for being very present. And this is why I call it present moment parenting, is be present and see those times where you actually need to step in because a child is going to get hurt or they're getting so frustrated that they're going to have a complete meltdown. But knowing when to step back, when to let them try it for themselves. And yes, they're going to fall over and sometimes they're going to hurt themselves. And that's actually okay. I love the fact that the Inuit people give the children their first hunting knife when they're 3. They give them a proper hunting knife that you can cut through whale blubber. And of course, they are there supervising that. They are teaching the child the skills to use that knife without hurting themselves. I'm sure that there are some accidents. But that's part of the learning process. If we don't ever hurt ourselves, we don't really ever learn. If we don't ever struggle, we don't learn. So I think about them. I think about, their 8-year-old drag races, their 6-year-old junior chefs. Sometimes I think we're holding kids back, and I'm not saying that we should be pushing kids to now go and be master junior chefs. I don't believe in pushing children beyond where they are at all, not in terms of their milestones, not in terms of success or achievement. I think children will naturally get there, but I don't think we should be holding them back. And I think a lot of the time we hold them back because of our own fears and our own issues that we're projecting onto them. And if we learn to trust them, I think they will surprise us most of the time. So that then comes to praise. Do we praise them then when they get it right, when they do something successful? And just like we shouldn't really be punishing children, I don't think we should be praising them either. So what does praise do? Here I've got a good story, of my mother is an amazing cook. And she made this meal one night for some friends who were coming around for dinner. And she was doing an Indian curry. And she literally started the day before from grinding the herbs and spices and everything. She made absolutely everything. Took her 2 days to prepare the meal. The only thing she didn't prepare in the whole meal was the custard, which she bought some Ultramel custard and she poured it into a jug and served that up with the dessert. And then her guest went on and on about this custard. Like, wow, that was the most amazing custard. Well done. You're such a good cook. So there's somebody praising, but the praise is backfiring. And it can backfire in so many ways. There's so many things that praise can do in terms of making our children doubt themselves or to have then performance anxiety. Well, can I do that again? There was this study that was done on children where they were giving them increasingly difficult puzzles to do. And they took one group of children, and after they completed each puzzle, they were like, well done. They gave them lots of praise. There was another group that they gave rewards. And then there was one group that they just left them, like, would you like to do the next puzzle? And as these puzzles got progressively more difficult, the children who had been praised or rewarded didn't want to do them. They were like, no thanks, I'll stop now. I've done enough puzzles. Whereas the children who had just been given no feedback at all were keen to just keep trying. They were like, yeah, give me the next challenge. So it just shows us, that when we praise, the backfiring that can happen there is that now the child is afraid to lose that acceptance or to lose that recognition. So what do we do? What do we do? Because they bring us a picture and they're like, Mom, look at my picture. What do you want to say? And of course, instinctively, because of our conditioning as well, we want to say, oh, that's amazing. You're an incredible artist. And then that can set up that kind of self-talk of, oh, no, I'm not. Or I wonder if she really does like it. So what we want to do instead is actually just describe. Describe what you see. Instead of, wow, that's a beautiful picture, you'd say, I see there's a big yellow sun. It looks like a warm day. And look at that house. It's got such a bright red door. And I see some birds flying in the sky there. So describe what you see. And then the child will praise themselves. And that's really what we're looking for, is that intrinsic motivation. We want them to be motivated from within. We don't want them to be dependent on us. And ultimately what our respectful parenting is about, and what any parenting is about at the end of the day, is having our children move on, letting them leave us and be able to do that with confidence and with strength and with knowing that they're able to make it out in the world. And if they need to, every time they do something, turn around and get our approval, then they're not going to be able to do that. So I'm just going to have a quick look through some of your questions here. For example, I've always taken breakfast to my daughter to wake her in the morning, which she can do for herself. I've tried to wake her up to go get breakfast herself, but she then gets cross. Well, of course she's going to get cross. If you were bringing me breakfast every morning and suddenly you stopped, I would also get cross. So what we're going to do there is just acknowledge that. Acknowledge it. Oh, it's very disappointing when you were expecting me to bring you breakfast and now I'm not doing it. Wow, that you're feeling really cross about that. And let her go do it. I don't mind a little bit of babying with kids every now and again, because of course they can all do these things, but there are those days where they really just need you to do it. So here and there, to nurture them, to let them be the baby, especially if another baby has come along, they've got a new sibling or something and they're regressing a bit, it's absolutely fine to do that. So it's just knowing those times when to give them that bit of a push and when to soften up a bit. How would you acknowledge performance if not by praising? Are you saying one shouldn't acknowledge? Absolutely acknowledge. They love to have what they're doing acknowledged. But if we acknowledge with a good girl, then the next day we can say bad girl, and then it's all taken away. Whereas if we say, you played that piece on the violin so that it moved me so deeply. You know, I knew exactly which song you were playing and you got it pitch perfect. Describe what you're hearing, describe what you're seeing, and let them do the praising. So they definitely want to know that we've noticed, and that's what we're telling them. We've noticed, but not just because good girl or well done is dismissive in a way. It's too easy. We really want to tune in to what it is they're doing. If they write us a beautiful poem, for instance, if we say, oh, that's lovely, then how do they know we really have read it or we really know it's lovely? But if you say, oh, that poem, it was almost like I was the eagle flying over the sunset there, you know, then they know, okay, she read it, she got it, she really appreciated it. Lorraine's question is, what would you suggest in doing when your child insists on having the parent help them all the time? My son doesn't like or want struggle. Of course, none of us want struggle. We really don't. And we need to acknowledge that. We acknowledge that something's difficult, and then we still step back and let them try. So what we can often do is offer them pointers, but without doing it for them. For instance, if they're tying their shoelaces, you can let them know it's actually quite difficult tying shoelaces. Let them know how long it took you to do it. You know, my kids loved the story of how I got my Doc Martens when I was 17, and there was this new way of tying where you wrapped it around and you had to tie with the one lace, and it took me weeks to learn how to do that, and they think that's hilarious, you know. So they quite enjoy hearing about our struggles. They also enjoy to see us struggle, and I think that's something that we don't do often enough. Is, you know, children see us being very competent in the world. We just go fry an egg and we don't burn it, and it isn't an issue, and we make toast and we make the bed and we tie our shoelaces, and it all looks so easy. But they haven't seen the struggle that we went through. They don't know that we've been tying that shoe for 35 years. And we need to point that out to children, that, you know, I've been doing this for a very long time. The first time I did it, I also wasn't so great at it. And they need to see us currently doing things that we struggle with. And sometimes it's nice for also them to see themselves as more competent than us. So I'll go, for instance, and play some Minecraft with my kids, and I'm absolutely useless. And they love that. It's hilarious for them to see me being useless at something that they're really good at. And just that they can see, you know, they've spent many hours on something and they've become competent at it. So I think definitely push them a bit, but then give them pointers. You're tying your shoelace, it is difficult. Okay, so you know what I find helpful is if I make 2 bunny ears first and then I wrap them together. And then I could show you on my shoe, but I'm still not doing it for you. And if they cry, if they have a tantrum about it, that's also okay. They need to vent that frustration. So I'm going to move on just because I know everyone's got children and it's late. Confidence. Okay, well, if we're letting kids struggle and we're trusting them, this is a lot of where our confidence is going to come from. So we accept all traits in our children. And I often get asked about middle children because there seems to be this middle child syndrome, which It really doesn't need to be that way. But what happens is you've got the older child who gets given a lot more responsibility. Usually when a third one comes along, the eldest one is asked to help out a bit. They're given a little bit more freedom, a little bit more responsibility. The newest one, the baby, is being babied, and then the middle child doesn't know where they fit in. So again, I would do exactly the same thing. Let them struggle, give them challenges, give them ways that they can help out and feel responsible and feel involved. And often that's difficult, if the middle child is still quite young, that it's easier for us to just do things ourselves, and it's quicker for us to just do things ourselves. But they need that. And part, I think, of respectful parenting and present moment parenting is actually slowing down, coming down to our child's pace. And it's such a beautiful thing if you allow it to happen, because the world is beautiful through the eyes of a child. It's actually magical. And sometimes we're just so wrapped up in being busy and getting things done that we forget to notice that. Right. I see. Okay, Carla is taking note of your questions. I'm going to run through a little bit more because there's a couple of big themes that I want to cover here. And then once we've done that, I want to let you know about our special offer that we have on tonight. And then I'm going to come and address as many questions as I can. So sibling rivalry was my next topic on the list. And wow. If I had a rand for everybody who had sibling rivalry issues in their home, I would be very wealthy. It's normal. It is totally normal. And sibling rivalry actually is a good thing in the long run, because children learn how to handle conflict. They learn how to handle difficult people. They learn that not everything is about them, and that they have to share with other people, and they have to make allowances for other people. And a lot of this happens through that sibling rivalry. So if you're wanting to have a peaceful home, well, I'm sorry to say, but you're focusing on a fantasy. And when we focus on fantasies, we attract nightmares. There's no such thing as a peaceful home, especially with more than one child in it. There will always be some fighting, there will always be some drama, and that's okay. So what we want to do as much as possible is let the kids work it out themselves. And this comes down to that trust thing again, is knowing that they are capable. Our children will always live up or down to our expectations. So if we have high expectations of them, they will live up to those. So what I like to do, and I'll give you an example here. Let's say your two kids are just having it out, and there's some toy that both of them want, and no one is going to share, and no one is giving it up. The thing to do, again, is use that descriptive technique, is to go in and describe the problem. Say, whoa, I see two children here who are furious with each other. They both want to play with the same toy. Nobody is prepared to give it up. I know you two are very competent. You're intelligent, competent people. I know you can work this out. I'm going to be making the dinner, and I'll hear from you when you've found a solution. If, of course, they're getting violent with each other, then you definitely do need to step in. But for the most part, they don't. They scream and shout, and maybe they knock each other a little bit, knock each other over, grab something. But it's very seldom that children get badly damaged in a sibling rivalry incident. Definitely keep an eye on it without hovering. You want to be present, you want to be aware of what's going on. But if we're hovering, a lot of the time the fight becomes more about us actually than about them. They want to get our attention. Mom, he did this, Dad, he did that, but she did this. They want to draw us into that fight, and that's not necessary. So we've got to keep the cool, calm and collected and let them work it out for themselves as much as possible. If that then ends up in a full-blown tantrum, which it can do, then what? Okay, when it comes to tantrums, I like to differentiate actually between a tantrum and a meltdown. So a tantrum is usually where you want something and that desire has been thwarted in whatever way. It usually requires an audience. If a child's having a tantrum and you disappear, the tantrum can end very quickly because there's nobody to engage with it. Whereas a meltdown is a child who's overwhelmed. So for whatever reason, they're overtired, there's too much sensory stimulation. Often the very sensitive children have meltdowns quite a lot. It looks the same. Okay, it looks the same, screaming, shouting, kicking, all of that. The only difference really when it comes to handling it is with a child who has meltdowns, you want to be aware of what those triggers are so that you can help your child to be aware of what their triggers are. Sometimes if they're getting worked up into that state because there's too much noise or things are too bright, they need to know what they can do to handle that, because the world is not actually set up for sensitive people. So they need to have some coping skills. So that would be the one difference. But other than that, I would handle them in the same way. And that is that children need to vent their emotions. The stuff needs to come out. And it looks scary sometimes. I had one question somebody emailed through to me of a child that was having a tantrum and bashing her head. I think it was on the floor. And that's quite common, actually. And it looks scary. And it sounds intense. And often we become overwhelmed. But what's really needed is actually our calm, quiet confidence in the situation, is that it's okay. They can have the tantrum. There is nothing wrong with that. Let the child ride it out. If they're bashing their head, I would just slip something soft under there so that they don't do themselves any real harm. And let them have their emotion. If you want to reflect that to them, usually in a tantrum, there's not even any point because it can be too loud. They're not going to really hear you. I would do it maybe afterwards. But if they're still in a state where they can hear you, you can tell them you're really frustrated about that. You're angry. You wanted that sweet. And I said no. It isn't nice having someone say no to you. And that's the way it is. So we're not going to give in to what they want, but we're also not going to run away from it. If your child is small enough and is not going to damage you in the process, you can pull that child who's having a tantrum onto your lap. You stay calm. You focus in on your breathing. That's probably the most powerful thing you can do. There's some incredible research by the HeartMath Institute where they've looked at how the mother's heart rate variability can be picked up in the brainwaves of her children up to 50 meters away. So your emotional state is being picked up by your child. So you want to draw your child into your calm rather than you getting drawn into their chaos, right? So the more calm you can stay, it's not going to go away immediately because the child needs to get that emotion out. But it's a lot easier for them to calm down if we are calm. If your child is thrashing and hitting and you're going to get hurt, of course you're not going to pull them onto your lap. You may even need to leave the room. Before you leave, you're going to tell your child, you are so angry you want to hit me. I can't let you do that. So I'm going to step outside. Just know that when you're ready and you need a hug or you need me, I'm going to be just outside. So we're telling the child, no matter how strong your emotion is, no matter how hectic it is, no matter how loud it is, no matter how much it's overtaken you, you are still loved and worthy. Okay, there's nothing wrong with you. The emotion will pass. And it helps children to know that we are not going to lose the plot because they have a strong emotion, because then it's very overwhelming. Now they've had this huge emotion, they've lost it, and now we lose it. So they're not only responsible for their own chaos, but also for our chaos. So they need us to be the adult in the situation and to just manage that in as calm a way as possible. And if that means you need to walk away, that's also fine. Just letting them know that you're doing that. Okay, so that's really why I talk about present moment parenting, is we need to be present in those moments. We've got to be present in those moments when our children, they need us the most. They're the hardest moments. And, I used to have a sign up on my children's door, just a little post-it note, a reminder for myself for those moments where it was getting tough. And all it said was, can I be the space in which for this to happen? Can I just be the space? They're having their moment, they're having their emotion, they're having their fight, they're going through life. Can I just be that witnessing presence for that? Can I allow it to be without wishing that it was something else? Because a lot of our trouble that we have with our kids is where we want the present moment to be other than what it is. We want it to be different. We've got some picture in our minds, and then reality isn't conforming itself to the picture in our minds, and that's when we get frustrated, and that's when we start fighting with our children. They should be coming to the table. They should be going to bed now. They shouldn't be having this tantrum. They shouldn't be throwing their food on the floor, whatever it is. We're wishing that our child and that moment is different to what it is. And that's a recipe for disaster. So working with it, and again, I just want to come back to what I said in the beginning, is there are still boundaries. And it's not that we're letting our children walk all over us. We're just respecting where they are in that moment, that they're not bad, that they're not trying to make our lives difficult. They're just expressing themselves in the only way that they know how in that moment. So a lot of what we focus on in present moment parenting is what I would call interpreting behavior. What's really going on underneath the surface? Because we know what's happening on the surface, but that's never the whole picture. So if we can dig into what's going on underneath the surface, then we're tapping into that child, then we're really connecting. And I think this goes for all our human relationships, especially with our partners as well. If your partner comes home and they're having a bad day, how often do we just get into a head bashing with this other person in our lives instead of going, okay, you're snapping at me. It sounds like you're really tired, or it sounds like you've been having a really bad day. Would you like to talk about that, or would you like me just to leave you alone to cool off for a bit? And that's really what our kids are looking for, just that connection. That you're a good person, you're a real person, you're a whole person. I love you as you are. And if you need me, I'm here for you. So what I wanted to talk to you about, just quickly before we get onto all your wonderful questions, is our present moment parenting members area. So Carla and I have put together a fantastic program that we wanted to share with you, because we get so many questions and so many parents are struggling with the same thing, wanting to do respectful parenting, but then ending up in a situation where you just don't have a clue what to do. So what we're offering in our present moment parenting members area is firstly an online forum. So that will be a space where you can ask me questions, you can ask each other questions, but most importantly, you can connect with like-minded people. There's one thing I've noticed with parents on this respectful parenting journey is that you get a lot of backlash. You get a lot of people who just do not understand what you're doing. Why are you asking the baby if you can pick her up? Or why won't you force your child to give me a hug? Or why are you letting your child do this? And why aren't you making them share? Or why don't you make them say sorry to me or the other child? There's so much resistance that it really helps to have a supportive community of people where you can discuss these things, where you can give each other some support, and where you can have those questions answered, where you get into those sticky situations and you really don't know how to do it respectfully. So that's the one thing we're going to have is the forum. Then we're going to have a webinar like this, where we will connect online. I will figure out a way to do this where we can have it a little bit more interactive, perhaps on Facebook. We've been looking into that, but we will definitely have once a month a webinar where we will answer questions, we will explore a topic in depth. Then we're also going to do weekly podcasts. So those will be all sorts of topics: consent, mindfulness, disciplining without shaming, how to get your children to comply without rewards, those kinds of topics. So we'll be doing that weekly. The other thing you would get access to would be my parenting breakthrough experience, which is less about actual parenting techniques and more about transforming yourself as a person. So dealing with your own traumatic experiences from childhood or your own conditioning, working through your limiting beliefs, working through your fears, those times where your children trigger you. Why are you being triggered? What is that's really going on under the surface for you? So the Parenting Breakthrough Experience is really about you and your own transformation and your own journey. So I'll be posting those videos from that course monthly into our members area. We're also going to have live events, so you guys can get together, meet each other, say hi, make some friends, let your babies make friends. We all also have discounted access to our weekly Moms and Tots playgroups. So we've started a couple of playgroups. We've got one in Sydenham, we've got one in Bryanston, and we've got one starting up now in Roosevelt Park. So you'll have discounted access to those if you'd like to come along. They're really for babies aged 1 to 3, more or less. So if you're interested in those, just definitely get in touch with us. And then the last thing will be a 20% off one-on-one consultations with me. So if you're still feeling like your question it hasn't been answered, or you need to explore something more in depth, or it's something personal, then I will offer our members a 20% discount on coming to see me as well. So that is what we have in store. If you're interested in that, there should be, I think, either below or to the side of this video, you'll see a description of the video, and there's a link in there that you can go to our Present Moment Parenting sign up. We have got a special at the moment, so the normal price will be 350 Rand per month. And if you sign up before the 2nd of June, I think, what are we doing? 1,050 Rand, and that will be for 4 months access. So you'll be getting 1 month for free if you sign up as part of our little launch special today. So that's Present Moment Parenting. If you have any trouble with that link or anything, please get in touch with Carla. It's Carla at transformationalparenting.guru. Or if you have any questions about it, or you want to sign up, you're not really sure what to do, then pop Carla an email. She'll get back to you either tonight or sometime tomorrow and answer all your questions on that. So now to get on to some of your questions. So there were some of you who emailed me through some questions, and I know there's been lots of questions here, so I'm going to check my WhatsApp. I know Carla was going to send me through some specific questions, but let me have a look here. So I had one email through from a mom who would prefer to remain anonymous. She says, "My little girl is 20 months old, very sweet but headstrong personality." I love those. "She's starting to hit those frustrated situations where if she doesn't get what she wants, or if she can't communicate what she wants, we face 1, her meltdown, or 2, she gets so angry she bangs her head on the floor and then cries about that. Please advise the best way to handle." So as I was saying earlier, that's quite normal. You know, kids have got big emotions, huge emotions in those little bodies, and that has to come out. So it's just acknowledging that you were trying to tell me something, I wasn't understanding it, that was very frustrating for you. It's made you so frustrated you want to bash your head on the floor. As I said, slip something in there so she doesn't hurt herself. We want to look at safety first. So anything, you know, that she can really damage herself on, we're going to move out of the way. But just quietly, just move it out the way. But I wouldn't stop it. You know, she's going to learn that that's unpleasant. It's not solving the situation, but she's also being allowed to express her feelings. So I just let her do that. She'll write it out. It's not going to last forever. Then she says, "I've been starting to use the method of putting her in the corner and turning my back on her for 30 seconds or so. My aim is for her to calm down, and then I go back and encourage her to say sorry. I'm noticing she's starting to either try escape the corner or not take it seriously, almost making it a joke. Or when I go back and say, let's say sorry, she finds that moment difficult and tries to avoid it by laughing or banging her head because she's cross with me. How do I handle this?" So there's some new research actually on this whole thing of the naughty corner, where social isolation is actually registering in the same part of the brain as physical pain. So I would never turn my back on a child. I would never isolate them, put them in a corner, shut them in a room. And unless they choose that, you know, as they get older, they often will shut themselves in their room. That's different. But that pushing away can be very scary for a child. and very painful for them to experience. So I know it's been in all the parenting books for the last 10 years, that's what they've all been saying. Don't smack your child, put them in the naughty corner, use the naughty corner. I've never found the naughty corner to work. Children find it a ridiculous idea. They get up, they get off the chair, you're going to put them back on the chair. I mean, how many times are you going to do that? And what are you going to do when they're too big to put them on the chair forcefully? So they see through that really quickly. So I think I'm not sure why you were putting her in the corner, if it was because of these meltdowns. She must have done something that she needed to say sorry for. So again, with the sorry, I don't believe in telling children to say sorry if they're not genuinely sorry. So often what we do is it's just a social nicety, like go and say sorry, but they really don't feel it. So we're trying to get them to do something that they don't feel. So of course they're not going to cooperate with that. Children are very authentic, and I think we can learn a lot from them in that respect. I think you can certainly tell a child how, sometimes they call it sports casting, where you just explain what's happened. So for example, I don't know, maybe she snatched a toy from someone. You can say, Jane is very upset. She was playing with that toy and now she doesn't have the toy anymore. So we're not shaming, we're not blaming, we're not anything. We're just saying what happened. Jane had the toy, now she doesn't have the toy anymore and she's crying. It's fine, so that they can start to understand that there's a connection between their action and other people's emotions. And they'll learn that. They learn it also by modeling, our modeling, looking at what we're doing. And she says, I've resorted to putting my phone on a kiddies program while she eats. And she's extremely difficult with her eating if I don't. Any advice? Again, I don't believe in distracting children from their food. This is something actually that plays out in adulthood. I like to look at what is the long-term consequence of the behavior. So instead of, getting compliance in the moment, what is the long-term effect of that? So for instance, something like eating while you're watching TV. It's proven that adults who eat while they're watching TV actually consume more than they would if they were focusing on their food. So I prefer an approach of mindful eating, where when we're eating, that's what we're doing. We're eating, we're sitting at the table, we can connect with each other. But if we're distracted and someone's shoveling food in our mouths, we learn that as a technique, like this is how to deal with life. So in those first 7 years of life, children are pretty much getting their conditioning for who they are, what the world is like, how we do things, what's good and bad, what's right and wrong. They're getting all that conditioning. And part of that conditioning that we're giving there is to say, don't eat mindfully. Just shovel in while you do something else. That's why I also don't chase children with a spoon and their food. It's like, sit down and be mindful about your food. Taste it, enjoy it. What does it taste like? I don't even mind personally kids playing with the food at the table. It's like, really love it, get into it, enjoy it. If she doesn't want to eat, let it be. Again, she's not going to starve. So you let her come and sit down at the table. If she's not going to do that, if she doesn't want to eat, then let her go. If she's not hungry, she's not hungry. And, if we look at ourselves as adults, you'll find there's some days you're super hungry. You want to eat every 5 minutes. And maybe you've been doing lots of exercise, or it's really cold or something, and you're burning up energy and you want to eat all the time. And then the other days it gets to 11 o'clock and you realize, I haven't even had breakfast yet. And actually I'm fine. And children are the same, this idea that we have to eat the 3 meals per day and stuff is it's just conditioning that we've been handed down. And sometimes I think it's us that needs to stop and question our conditioning rather than questioning the child's natural instinct to eat or not eat. So my other question that I got emailed through here, let me just find that. That was from Tanya. She says, I have identical twin boys, 27 months, and these are the issues I'm facing. Do I need to have one-on-one time with each, and if so, how? I took one shopping, the one that is the most clingy and needy, and that really upset the other one, the more independent one. I regretted it immediately I got home and saw how he responded to us. So yes, you do need to have one-on-one time with them, and that's actually why they'll get upset, is because they're not getting that connection. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time in a day. It's moments where we're connecting. So for instance, changing a nappy is a really good time to really connect in with that one child whose nappy you're changing. So not changing this one's nappy and then being distracted by the other one at the same time. So if the other one's pulling at you and Mom, I want your attention, is to say, I'm actually busy with this one right now. I will be with you in a minute. And really focus on the child that you're with. In this situation where you've gone out shopping with the one, of course the other one is going to be upset. That's normal. And again, we can just acknowledge that emotion. If we get upset, so you're saying that you're regretting that immediately, they are going to pick up on that regret. We must be confident in our decisions that we make with the children, and that's what they pick up on. They want a confident leader, someone who knows what they're doing, who's okay with your emotions, however they come out. So you say, acknowledge the child's emotion. You're very upset. I went shopping with your brother and you really wanted to come along. And next time it's going to be your turn. So let him know, I hear you. I hear that you're upset. That's okay. You have a right to feel what you feel, and it's not going to throw me. I'm not going to fall apart because you had a strong emotion. The same with the tantrums. They need to know that we're okay. We've got this. You're not being abandoned, and you are allowed to have those big emotions that you're having. So how do I deal with competition between them for my attention, like both wanting me to pick them up at the same time? I try sitting down and hugging each with one arm, but they're not satisfied with that. They want me exclusively, as do all our children. And I think, it's challenging with twins because they're the same age, but even if you've got different age children, you're going to be having the same thing. They both want your attention. They want it to be fair, And there again, if you're hugging them both at the same time, that's not what they're after. They want the one hug. So hug the one. I'm hugging your brother now. He's getting my full attention. And it's going to be your turn in a minute. And then you can hug the other one. So definitely, if you're implementing those one-on-one times with them regularly, small moments, because I know parents are busy and we don't have time to spend an hour with each child every day. It's not necessarily practical. So small periods of time where you're doing something with a child, be fully there. That's why we're calling it present moment parenting. Be fully in that moment with the child, just focused on the one child. They know that that's what they're looking for. And you'll find if you just give them that 5 or 10 minutes, they're happy. It's like their love tank has been filled up, and then they can go and they're okay when you go and spend one-on-one time with the other. And then the last question here was, if they're not cooperating, my nanny sometimes says, okay, mommy's going to go now and she'll come back when you settle down, or whatever we need them to do. This works well if both are not cooperating, but if one is, it seems unfair for that one to be punished, i.e. mommy leaving when it's the other one who's acting out. So I would never use your love and attention as a reward or punishment. Love and attention is given freely regardless of your behavior. Absolutely regardless of your behavior. And that's exactly what we're saying in terms of the tantrums, for instance, is it doesn't matter how uncooperative you are, how loud you are, how difficult a day you're having, you are loved. And that's a non-negotiable. So if a child's not cooperating, we need to look at why. And often if they're little, these boys are 27 months, they want to play. They're inviting you to play with them. They're not being naughty. So they don't need to be punished. They want to play, or they want your attention or something. So making sure again that they're getting that attention that they obviously needing. If they're getting that, they will definitely be more cooperative, but also being that confident leader. So if they're doing something that isn't acceptable, let's say they're slamming the door, you ask once, please don't slam the door. Or I prefer not to use the word don't, and that's a whole other story, but please leave the door alone. And then if they do it again, you say, either you must leave the door alone, or we're going to go and play outside. Which would you prefer? Would you prefer to leave the door and stay in here, or would you prefer to go and play outside? And then if they do it again, you say, I see you've decided to go and play outside. You pick them up and you go outside. So you're never asking more than twice. And this is, I think, where a lot of the parenting frustration comes in, is that we ask and ask and ask and ask, and we're asking nicely, and then we crack. So never more than twice. On the third time, you must be prepared to follow through with some form of action. And this takes a bit of practice, and it takes also a bit of brainstorming when you're not in the moment, because sometimes in the moment it is really difficult to think of what to do. So a bit of brainstorming outside of that, and think about possibly some choices that you can give them in that moment, and then how you can physically follow through with that choice in, again, a kind and respectful way. So I just want to have a look quickly at any questions Carla sent through here. What if a kid always asks for your help? The kid doesn't want to struggle through it. I think we did address that, that, of course nobody wants to struggle. We would all have somebody else do stuff for us if we could. So it's just, again, giving them that reassurance that you know that they can do it, that they are capable. They need to know that from us, and just to be sure in yourself that you're not going to do it for them, because they will pick up any uncertainty in you. If you are saying that you're wanting them to do something for themselves, but you're not sure about that, you're like, are you actually in a rush, or there's something else going on, they'll definitely pick up on that. So if you're wanting them to do something for themselves, you also must be prepared to be a bit patient. And again, children require us to slow down a little bit, not be in such a rush. If you are in a rush, absolutely do it for them. There you can do one of those choices. Are you going to tie your shoes yourself, or would you like me to do it? They're not doing it. Okay, I'm going to tie your shoe right now because we need to leave. And you're done. But if you have got the time, then to let them go through that struggle, and again, to acknowledge the struggle, that it is difficult. They need to know that you can see that they're struggling. And if they ask you for your help, I wouldn't refuse it. I wouldn't refuse help for a child that genuinely asks. But then I would give that help rather in pointers than in actually doing it for them. So definitely offer help in ways where you can just give them tips, give them advice, give them some pointers, maybe help them with part of the process and let them finish it, so that ultimately they're getting that confidence in their own abilities. Lana says here, please can you comment more on discipline? You mentioned not using alienating or naughty corner as a technique, but elaborate more on what works with a child between 18 months and 2.5 years. So what I prefer rather than discipline is, rather than those time outs, is to have time ins. A lot of what we see that we call misbehavior is children whose needs are not being met in some way. And usually it's just that need for closeness, that need for attention, for that bit of love and connection. So if we have regular time ins with them, which is just snuggling somewhere, being close, and then we use that as well when they're acting out, then it's not a punishment. And we're not leaving them alone there. We're sitting with them on that chair. We're connecting with them. We're breathing with them. That really can help. Between 18 months and 2.5, at that age, they are pushing boundaries, and that's quite normal. So again, to have quite firm boundaries, to know what you want, and to be very clear about that, to follow through with physical action if necessary, removing them from the situation if you need to, or something like that. So yes, discipline. When I think of the word discipline, I actually think of the word disciple. We're leading them. We're helping them to behave in a way that's appropriate. So at that age, they don't yet know what's appropriate. They can't yet take other people's point of view or other people's emotions into account. When I think of kids at that age, what I most think about is the prefrontal cortex, which is a part of our brain that deals with managing behavior, with problem solving, with weighing up issues. And the prefrontal cortex actually is only fully developed when we're 25. So in a 2-year-old, it's just not in operation yet. And that's that part of the brain that will stop you when you want to hit someone. It's the part that says, don't do it, right? You're going to get into trouble or something's going to happen. You shouldn't really behave like that. But at that age, they don't really have a prefrontal cortex that's developed enough for them to restrain their behavior. So they may just hit or bite or kick or whatever, things that we would all love to do as adults, but we have some control. So there I think about being the child's external prefrontal cortex is when you see that hand going to punch, you step in as the prefrontal cortex and stop the hand and say, I won't let you do that. Just let them know, like, I've got you. You can't manage controlling this right now, but I can. I'm not judging you. I'm not shaming you. I'm not going to discipline you because I know you don't have that control. So when I think about that, I think of it's a physiological thing. Like we wouldn't punish a child for instance, wetting the bed, because we know that physiologically they're not mature enough to do that. And it's the same thing with their behavior. They're not physiologically mature enough to control a lot of these behaviors that we'd like them to control. So we're going to do the controlling for them. And they're going to learn from that so that by the time that prefrontal cortex is developing, then they know what to do and they can manage that themselves. What is the difference between setting boundaries and holding back? I'm not sure, Lana, exactly what you mean by that. The difference between setting boundaries and holding back. If you can maybe elaborate a little bit for me. Oh, sorry, the reflection in my glasses. I know the screen is so bright. There's not really much I could do about that. I tried multiple different ways of sitting before I started, but it is what it is. Here it is again, difference between setting boundaries and holding back. I don't know, Lana, if you can elaborate on that for me, then we can answer that. Comment more. Okay, we've got that one. All right, so I think we've covered most of the questions. When to set a boundary. So when would we set a boundary? In the same way that we would set a boundary with an adult. For instance, if a child is going to hit, that's a boundary that needs to be put in place. Think about how you're going to behave in society. Is that going to be okay or is it not going to be okay? If someone is not being respected in a situation, that would be a place for a boundary. So just as much as we want to be respectful parents, we want to respect our children, we also want our children to understand about respecting others. And this is such a big thing with often how I see children behaving with their parents, and they're insulting their parents or hitting them or something, and no one's doing anything about that. But what do we teach our children when we model that kind of behavior? We're actually teaching them not to respect you, but ultimately not to respect themselves. Because if you let someone hit you, then one day they may let someone hit them. And, that can set up some very problematic behavior. So I like to think about what is the long-term consequence? Where does this fit in? So if a child, for instance, is going to hit you, I would stop that. I would say, I won't let you hit me, but acknowledge the emotion. You are so cross that you want to hit me. I won't let you do that. I won't let you hit me. I respect myself, right? So you're going to just gently step in there. If they're going to do that, for instance, to someone else. You say you were talking about holding them back. I was concerned about needing to teach them to be careful of hurting themselves or doing something that's problematic. The culture that gives 3-year-old knives. Oh, I see. Holding them back. Yes. So again, it's about being present, being aware of what a child is actually capable of, and being there to help them through that. So you can be there and be aware, but not step in and interfere. So we're doing as minimal interference as possible. So let's say your child wants to climb a jungle gym, your 2-year-old is wanting to climb a jungle gym, is actually letting them do that. You can be there to make sure that they're not going to get hurt. They're going to go as far as they can go, but then they have to learn to get back down again. So you can be there to make sure that real hurt doesn't happen. They're not going to break an arm or something. Letting them fall over here and there is not a bad thing, though, because that's how they're going to learn what they are capable of themselves at this particular point in time. But I think what we tend to do is we're jumping in all the time. We're so worried that our child's going to get hurt or something's going to happen, that we're always saying, like, be careful, don't do that, especially with the first child. We're hopping in every 5 minutes and saying, don't do this and don't do that, and please be careful, and, stopping them from falling when they're learning to walk and things like that, where if we just actually allow them to go through those challenges themselves, they will learn their own capabilities. So this can be taken even as far as don't hold a child's hand while they're learning to walk. They'll pull themselves up on furniture, they will do natural things like that, but when we hold them when they're trying to do something, they think they have more capability than they do, because they're not getting to test out their own limits. So letting them know where their own limits are. So I hope that sort of answered your question. I'm going to wrap it up just because it is getting late, and I'm sure that you all have early mornings, possibly wakings in the night. So I hope this has been helpful to you. As I said, we will send you the replay to this. If you're interested in joining us for Present Moment Parenting, having an opportunity to answer more questions, please do click on that link or pop Carla an email. And yes, we look forward to seeing you there and connecting on a long-term basis. Thank you so much for being here. And yes, we're going to call it a day and have a fantastic evening and a fantastic weekend. Thank you very much. Cheers.